It started like any other morning on Good Morning America. Michael Strahan, looking sharp in a dark blue suit, was flashing his signature smile. Across from him sat Johnny Depp, slumped in his chair, wrapped in scarves and leather bracelets. It was supposed to be a routine segment promoting a new movie, a few charming anecdotes, and nothing more. But the air felt heavier than it should have been. At that moment, no one knew how this harmless show would end. It would surely be the biggest scandal of the year. Subscribe to our channel. It will help me fulfill my dream of reaching 1,000 subscribers. Now let's move on to the video. Michael leaned forward, his voice warm but deliberate. Johnny, great to have you back. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it? Johnny's lips twitched, a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. Wild's one way to put it, Michael. His voice was low, almost a drawl, each word laced with a faint edge. He shifted, his rings clinking against the armrest. The audience chuckled, expecting the roguish charm. But his fingers lingered on the chair, gripping just a touch too tight. Michael's grin held steady. You've got the Black Pearl's curse coming out. Fans are losing their minds. What's it like stepping back into that world? Johnny tilted his head, his glasses catching the light. It's like slipping into an old coat. Fits, but it's got holes you don't notice till you're standing in the rain. A pause. The audience laughed again, softer this time. Michael's eyes flicked to his cards, then back to Johnny. The rhythm was off, just slightly. Old coat, huh? Sounds like there's a story there. Michael's tone was playful, but his posture straightened, like a boxer sensing an opening. Johnny's smile faded. He reached for the glass of water, his movements slow, deliberate. Plenty of stories, Michael. Not all of them fit for morning TV. The words landed softly, but they carried a shadow. The audience stirred, a murmur rippling through the crowd. A producer in the control booth frowned, her pen tapping faster. Michael chuckled, smooth as ever. Come on, now. You're Johnny Depp. You've always got a tale to spin. He leaned closer, his voice dropping just enough to feel personal. What's one thing you've learned, doing this all these years? Johnny's fingers paused on the glass. He looked at Michael, really looked at him, for the first time. You learn who's got your back. And who's just waiting for you to trip. His voice was quiet, but the words cut through the studio's hum. The camera zoomed in, unbidden, catching the faint clench of his jaw. Michael's smile didn't waver, but his eyes narrowed slightly. That sounds like a man who's seen some things. Care to share? Johnny leaned back, crossing his arms. You want the truth, Michael? Or the version that sells? The audience went still. A stagehand froze mid-step, her clipboard forgotten. The air felt like it was holding its breath. The conversation shifted, but the undercurrent stayed. Michael steered toward safer ground, talk of the film, the costumes, the fans. Johnny answered, his voice smooth but distant, like a man reading lines he didn't believe. Each response was polite, polished, but laced with something unspoken. Michael, ever the professional, kept the rhythm going, his questions light but probing, like a fisherman testing the line. So, Johnny, Michael said, glancing at his notes, this role, Captain Jack's darker this time. More personal, some say. You pulling from your own life for that? Johnny's lips twitched again, not quite a smile. He adjusted his glasses, the lenses flashing under the lights. Every role's personal, Michael. You don't play a man without bleeding a little. His voice was soft, but the word bleeding hung in the air, sharp and raw. The audience shifted, uncomfortable but riveted. Michael nodded, his grin softening into something more curious. Bleeding, huh? That's a strong word. Sounds like this one hit close to home. Johnny's fingers tapped the armrest, a slow, deliberate rhythm. Close enough to bruise. He paused, his gaze flicking to the camera for a split second, as if daring it to blink. You ever notice how people love a good story? Michael? Till it's too real. Then they'd rather look away. The studio lights seemed to sharpen, casting harsher shadows. Michael's smile held, but his eyes were working harder now, reading the man across from him. People love you, Johnny. They're not looking away today. Johnny let out a low chuckle, more breath than sound. Today, maybe. Tomorrow's another story. He reached for the water again, but his hand stopped short, hovering over the glass. The gesture felt like a warning, though no one could say why. Michael leaned forward, his voice dropping into a confiding tone. You sound like you've got something to say. This is a safe space, man. Lay it out. Johnny's head tilted, his eyes unreadable behind the tinted lenses. Safe, he repeated, the word curling like smoke. That's a funny word for a place with 10 cameras and a live feed. The audience laughed, but it was nervous, uneven. A producer whispered something into her headset, her eyes locked on the monitors. Michael's grin tightened, just for a moment. Okay, fair point. But you've been in this game a long time. You know how to handle the spotlight. Johnny's fingers stopped tapping. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice low but clear. Handling it's one thing. Trusting it's another. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling out. The camera lingered on his face, catching the faint twitch of his mouth, the shadow in his expression. Michael's note cards lay untouched on the desk now, forgotten. The segment was supposed to be 10 minutes. They were at 7, and the air was thick with something unspoken. Michael shifted gears again, his voice bright but careful. Let's talk about the fans. They've stuck by you through everything, lawsuits, headlines, all of it. What do you say to them? Johnny's posture changed, his shoulders loosening slightly. The fans, he trailed off, his voice softer now, almost vulnerable. They're the only reason I'm still here. They see through the noise. Always have. For the first time, his words felt unguarded, like a crack in a carefully built wall. The audience leaned forward, drawn in by the shift. Michael seized the moment, his tone gentle but pointed. That noise must be tough. All those headlines, the courtrooms. How do you keep going when the world's shouting at you? Johnny's hand moved to his glasses, pulling them off slowly. His eyes, unguarded now, were sharp and tired, like a man who'd spent too long fighting shadows. You keep going because stopping's not an option. Not when people are watching, waiting for you to crack. He paused, his gaze locking onto Michael's. You ever been in a room where everyone's waiting for you to fall apart, Michael? The question hung there, heavy and raw. Michael's smile faltered, just for a second, before he recovered. Can't say I have. But I bet you've got a story about it. Johnny's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. More than one. He leaned back, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You want to know what it's like? It's like standing on a tightrope, with everyone below betting on how long till you fall. And the ones closest to you, they're the ones holding the net. Or cutting it. The studio went quiet. No laughter, no murmurs. A camera whirred softly, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. Michael's fingers twitched on the desk, his usual ease replaced by something careful, deliberate. That's heavy, Johnny. Sounds like you're talking about something specific. Johnny's gaze didn't waver. Maybe I am. He reached for the water again, but this time he drank, a slow, deliberate sip. The glass clinked against the table as he set it down, the sound sharp in the hush. You ever wonder, Michael, what it's like to have your life turned into a headline? Not the good ones. The ones that make people whisper. Michael's eyes flicked to the control booth, then back to Johnny. I think we've all had our moments in the spotlight. But yours have been louder than most. Johnny's laugh was short, bitter. Louder. Yeah. That's one way to put it. He leaned forward again, his voice low but piercing. You know what's funny? People think they know you. They read a headline, see a clip, and suddenly they're experts on your soul. But they don't know the half of it. And the ones who do, he trailed off, his jaw tightening. They're usually the ones selling the story. The silence that followed was deafening. The audience was frozen, the cameras unblinking. Michael's grin was gone now, replaced by a careful neutrality. He opened his mouth to speak, but Johnny cut him off, his voice steady but laced with something dangerous. Ask me something real, Michael. Or don't ask at all. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. The lights burned brighter, the camera's red light a steady pulse. Michael's fingers froze on his note cards, his eyes locked on Johnny's. The studio held its breath, waiting for the crack to widen. Michael's jaw tightened, just enough to notice. He tilted his head, his voice low, almost intimate. All right, Johnny. Something real. He paused, letting the silence stretch, the camera catching the faint glint of sweat on his brow. You've been through the fire, courtrooms, headlines, the whole world picking you apart. What's the one thing you wish you could take back? Johnny's face didn't change, but his fingers twitched, curling into a loose fist. The glass of water sat untouched now, its surface still rippling from his earlier sip. Take back? His voice was soft, but it carried an edge, like a blade wrapped in velvet. You don't get to take things back when the world's already made up its mind. He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto Michael's, unyielding. You want real? I wish I'd trusted my gut sooner. Saved myself a lot of scars. The audience stirred, a low murmur rippling through. A producer in the control booth whispered urgently into her headset, her eyes wide. Michael's smile was gone, replaced by a careful intensity. Scars, he repeated, testing the word. That's a strong way to put it. Who left those scars, Johnny? Johnny's lips curved, not quite a smile. You're good at this, Michael. You know that? His voice was calm, but the undercurrent was raw, like a wound torn open. You want names? You want me to point fingers on live TV? That's what everyone's waiting for, right? He gestured faintly toward the audience, the cameras, the world beyond. A nice, tidy villain for the headline. Michael didn't blink. I'm not asking for a villain. I'm asking for your truth. His voice was steady, but his fingers tapped the desk once, a flicker of unease. The camera caught it, zooming in, the lens a silent witness. Johnny's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a near whisper. My truth? He leaned closer, elbows on his knees, his rings glinting under the lights. Here's a truth for you. People love a story till it bites them. They'll cheer you, crown you, then tear you down the second it suits them. And the ones you trusted most, he paused, his jaw clenching. They're the ones who know exactly where to cut. The studio was a vacuum, the silence so complete it felt like the world had stopped. The camera lingered on Johnny's face, catching the flicker of pain in his eyes, the way his mouth tightened. Michael's posture shifted, his shoulders squaring as if bracing for impact. That sounds personal, he said, his tone careful but unrelenting. You talking about someone specific? Johnny's laugh was sharp, a single exhale. You don't give up, do you? He shook his head, his gaze flicking to the camera for a split second, as if acknowledging its presence. Let's just say I've learned who my friends are. And who's just passing through. The words were measured, but they carried a weight that made the air feel thinner. Michael leaned forward, his voice dropping to match Johnny's. You're dodging, Johnny. You said you wanted real. So give it to us. Who hurt you? The question was a blade, precise and deliberate, slicing through the polite veneer of the interview. The audience held its breath. Johnny's fingers tightened on the armrest, his knuckles whitening. For a moment, he was still, his eyes locked on Michael's, searching for something, intent, maybe, or a trap. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady, each word a calculated step into dangerous territory. You want to know who hurt me? Look at the headlines. Look at the people who turned my life into a circus. The ones who sold their stories, their lies, for a paycheck and a spotlight. He paused, his gaze unwavering. But you already knew that, didn't you, Michael? The accusation hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Michael's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't flinch. I'm just asking the questions people want answered, he said, his tone calm but firm. You're the one who said you wanted real. Johnny's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. Real, he repeated, the word bitter. You know what's real, Michael? Real is waking up every day knowing half the world thinks you're a monster. Real is fighting for your name when everyone's already decided your guilt. Real is looking in the mirror and wondering if you're still the man you thought you were. His voice cracked, just slightly, on the last word, and the studio felt it like a shockwave. The camera zoomed in, catching the raw edge in his eyes, the way his hands trembled for a split second before he clasped them together. The audience was silent, riveted, their faces a mix of shock and fascination. A stagehand dropped a pen, the sound jarring in the hush. Michael's expression softened, but he didn't back down. That's heavy, Johnny. But you're still here. That says something. Johnny's gaze didn't waver. Does it? He leaned back, his voice quieter now, almost reflective. Or does it just mean I'm too stubborn to quit? The words were soft, but they carried a finality, like a door closing. Michael opened his mouth to respond, but a producer's voice crackled in his earpiece, sharp and urgent. Wrap it up, Michael. Now. He hesitated, his eyes flicking to the control booth, then back to Johnny. The moment stretched, taut as a wire. Johnny, Michael said finally, his voice gentler now, you're one of a kind. Thanks for being here. He extended a hand, the gesture formal but strained. Johnny looked at the hand, then at Michael. For a moment, it seemed he might not take it. Then he reached out, his grip brief but firm. Thanks for the spotlight, he said, his voice low, the words laced with something unreadable, gratitude, maybe, or defiance. He stood, his movements slow, deliberate, the scarves and bracelets catching the light as he walked off the set. The cameras followed him, their red lights unblinking, until he disappeared behind the curtain. The audience sat frozen, the silence deafening. Michael stared at the empty chair, his note cards still untouched. The lights dimmed, and the show cut to commercial. By noon, the internet was ablaze. Clips of the interview flooded X, dissected and debated in real time. Johnny Depp breaks silence on GMA trended, alongside hashtags like #DeppUnfiltered and #StrayhandGrills. Pundits called it a meltdown, a confession, a triumph. Fans flooded comment sections, some praising his raw honesty, others speculating on the scars he'd mentioned. A grainy screenshot of his trembling hands went viral, captioned, "When the truth hurts." In the studio, the crew moved on, dismantling the set, prepping for the next segment. Michael sat alone for a moment, staring at the glass of water Johnny had left behind, its surface still now, reflecting the fading lights. A producer clapped him on the shoulder, muttering about ratings. Michael nodded, but his eyes lingered on the empty chair. The world kept turning, hungry for the next headline. But in that quiet moment, as the studio lights cooled, one truth lingered, unspoken. Johnny had walked away, but the weight of his words stayed behind.